Celebrating Black history from the shores of South Carolina to the neighborhoods of North Carolina. Tonight, we pay homage to the pioneers.
That was snatched up and pulled up off the counter, taken out back to the jailhouse.
Who broke barriers.
I would just open up the mic and say, well, hi world, this is your girl, Chatty Hattie.
And highlight the present-day trailblazers.
I certainly feel like I'm living the dream. Every day I wake up and it's such a blessing.
Creating opportunities for future generations.
I definitely view myself as a role model.
Black history in the Carolinas. A legacy of courage, a legacy of triumph, a legacy of leadership.
Good evening, I'm Erica Bryant.
And I'm Damani Lewis. Over the next hour, we will take you on a journey as we explore the pivotal contributions of Black Americans in the Carolinas.
From those who paved the way in education, fought for our freedom, made a difference in medicine, and those who bravely sat down to help shape America's future. For many Black Americans, the sit-in movement helped to usher in a new sense of pride during civil rights. The impetus for them all, the Greensboro Four, when Black students from what is now North Carolina A&T State University sat down at a segregated lunch counter in Woolworth, asked for a cup of coffee, and were refused service. They remained seated until the store closed. The peaceful demonstration spread across the country and the Carolinas.
In Rock Hill, 9 students forever became etched in history when they walked into a McCrory's 5 and dime store. Channel 9's Amelia White sat down with one of the men who became known as the Friendship 9.
We were sitting in the restaurant that I couldn't sit down in back in the 50s and the 60s. I could come in, but never sit down here. I could stand at the end of the counter and order something, they'll give it to me, but sitting down in here, that was a no-no. It wasn't no law, but you know, that was, as they say, understanding the Jim Crow law, that they call it.
On January 31st, 1961, David Williamson Jr., one of the original lunch counter protesters, started a revolution by sitting down. 9 students, known as the Friendship 9, marched to McCrory's 5 and dime in Rock Hill, South Carolina. At the time, it was a store and lunch counter that didn't serve people who looked like Williamson. Now the restaurant is called Counter, where you'll find Williamson sitting in the very seat where he once took a stand.
And the lady, before she can get all the words out about that she couldn't serve us, that was snatched up and pulled up off the counter, taken out back to the jailhouse. And then they started bringing us out one at a time to bookers and fingerprinters. And we stayed in there overnight. They always have court that morning. So they got us all out when we went in the court.
Robert McCullough, John Gaines, Thomas Gaither, David Williamson Jr., W.T. Dub Massey, Mac Workman, Clarence Henry Graham, James Wells, and Willie McLeod were all convicted of trespassing.
They took the gavel and they hit it down on the thing. He said, I find you guilty, $100 or 30 days.
So the group decided to buck the system, shifting their strategy to jail, no bail.
Instead of we going to the community and taking money out of the community to give to the city and the county for unjust law, we decided to do the jail no bail. That way they had to take care of us.
Williamson says paying the bail would have validated their own arrest and acceptance of an immoral system. So they spent 30 days behind bars and sparked a nationwide movement.
That's what we were trying to draw attention to the disparity between the race. We needed to make a change and bring, make things better. And when you do stuff for that reason, then, you don't worry about, the recognition.
Is there an image or a sound that replays in your head from that day?
They put it in the jail, and when they slammed that door, it sounded like that thing rang for a half hour or more. The sound, like you just hear this ding.
You still hear it to this day?
Yeah, even when I watch the movie, if I see somebody get locked up and they slam that gate, you can hear the sound. It just penetrates.
On March 2nd, Friendship 9 was let out of the York County Prison Farm, but justice for the group still moved slowly.
On March 2nd, when you guys walked out of that jailhouse, those charges were still attached to your names.
Oh, yeah.
For nearly 54 years.
Only place it hurted us was right here. When I left and went to New Jersey, I always put down that I had been to jail, but I couldn't get a job around him at that time with that record. But I can say, the prison record, I wore that as a badge of honor.
5 decades later, justice eventually came.
And I know you said it was a relief, but did it seem obviously delayed?
Oh,
long overdue?
Definitely long overdue. And something I didn't expect. I didn't ever think it would happen.
In 2015, Friendship 9's convictions from staging a sit-in at this Rock Hill diner were dismissed.
Did you see that coming? I mean, the very judge who sent you guys to jail, 54 years later, his nephew dropped your charges.
No. I never expected it.
And he didn't expect he would get his own seat, the one he was once told that wasn't made for him.
That's another thing that blew the mind. I say, Rock Hill, me, I got my own chair. And I say, wow.
Williamson still lives in Rock Hill and is one of the 5 surviving members of the group. He says he hopes the next generation will also take a seat in order to take a stand.
And I'm hoping that instead of going backward, we keep going forward. Things get better and better for everyone.
In Rock Hill, Amelia White, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
High school students were also inspired by the sit-in movement. On April 1st, 1960, 24 students from Burke High School in Charleston staged a sit-in at the segregated Kress & Company lunch counter, and they were refused service but remained seated. Police arrested the students just before the store closed. Among the 24 peaceful demonstrators, Harvey Gantt, who would later integrate Clemson. In 1983, Gantt was elected Charlotte's first black mayor.
2 months before the sit-ins in Charleston, dozens of brave students from Johnson C. Smith University took part in sit-ins at 8 whites-only lunch counters across Charlotte. Channel 9's Erica Jackson sat down with 2 of the women who took part in the movement.
The Johnson C. Smith University yearbook takes Barbara Funderburk and Mary Anna Neal Bradley back to their college years. Some of their most prominent memories didn't make the cut, but did make their mark on U.S. history.
I didn't realize it was such a big thing, but I know I just thought there was an injustice.
Bradley and Funderburk graduated from West Charlotte High School, one of Charlotte's all-black schools until the late 60s. They remember using separate water fountains and separate restrooms from their white peers. They sat in the back of public transportation, while white people sat in the front seats.
You always were asked to move to the back like you were a bunch of cattle. Things like this I thought about, and I said, I'm going to, participate.
In February 1960, the women learned their classmate, Charles Jones, wanted to follow in the footsteps of civil rights leaders in Greensboro by sitting down at segregated lunch counters in Charlotte.
They would go to these different meetings and stuff and finding out ways to protest, have a protest and do it peacefully.
The buttoned-up young women remember becoming bold when they opted to join the demonstrations.
We found out that all you had to do was be quiet and sit there and get in there.
Funderburk and Bradley tell me organizers would plan their march the night prior. Then they joined more than 100 students walking from Johnson C. Smith campus to uptown Charlotte.
By the time we got down there, they would know we were coming, so they would take the seats they would have taken them off. So that didn't work, so they decided different people would take us down there in cars.
Their protests helped lead to the desegregation of lunch counters in Charlotte. The women worry the U.S. will regress if schools don't teach about these moments in history.
The kids really don't know for example, what we came through and how they could build on that to improve themselves.
In uptown Charlotte, Erica Jackson, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
You've likely heard the name Dorothy Counts Scoggins. At just 15 years old, she became a civil rights pioneer when in 1957 she integrated Charlotte's Harding High. She is one of 4 students who integrated some of Charlotte's all-white schools that year. Delois Huntley, Alexander Graham Junior High, and brother and sister Gus Roberts of Central High and Jervo Roberts at Piedmont Junior High. Gus was the only one to graduate from the school he integrated.
In 1964, 7 black students integrated Rock Hill High School. William Young, Kathleen Knox, Paul Watson, Alvin Thomas Murdoch, Cora Murdoch, Robert Totley Jr., and Vicki Young.
Charlotte's first public high school for black students recently celebrated its centennial. Second Ward High School educated generations of families.
And Channel 9's Jonathan Lowe got a look at the efforts to preserve the school's rich history, and he sat down with one former student, 107-year-old Ms. Julia Teamer, to learn how Second Ward inspired her.
In the midst of segregation, alumni and descendants of alumni say Second Ward High School was a symbol of what's possible. Teachers and administrators taught students to value their education, but also the importance of helping those coming behind them to succeed. As Charlotte continues to grow and change by leaps and bounds, stories of the city's heritage are more critical to tell. And there's a renewed effort to preserve that history for decades to come.
African American history is either lost, stolen, or strayed.
Last July, alumni and descendants of alumni of Charlotte's first public high school for black people celebrated 100 years. It was an opportunity to retell stories passed down from generations.
Their children, cousins, etc., sharing with us information about their family's experience at Second Ward.
But while artifacts of the school still exist at the Alumni House on Beattyford Road, living, breathing examples aren't as readily available, or so it was first thought.
We found out that Mrs. Julia McKnight Teamer, a graduate of 1936, that is 107 years old, is still alive in Charlotte.
It was through that centennial celebration that Susan Slade realized the power of her own lineage.
And I grew up with her in her story, but at that time, being young, it didn't have the same impact that it has now. Once I started seeing all of this history, people, letters, awards, this needs to be preserved. I just didn't want to toss it.
This past January, the Mecklenburg County Commission recognized Miss Julia Teamer with a proclamation naming January 17th as Julia Ann McKnight Teamer Day.
With all of those celebrities were around me and whatnot, I just didn't know what to tell them.
The recognition for her dedication to children.
What made you become a teacher?
I enjoyed being a teacher and helping people to learn, especially young people.
Educated at institutions like Johnson C. Smith University and Columbia, she and her husband would later open their own school, the Teamer School.
If they wanted to come, they came. We had a few whites, and then we had blacks.
Still spry and energetic, Miss Teamer remembers clearly what drove her to inspire young lives.
They wanted to finish high school at least, and we encouraged them to continue their study, and they would become whatever they wanted them to be.
And that was despite the segregation she lived through from beginning to end.
Even being one of the first black teachers to integrate the white schools, that's her legacy. That's part of what she did. And you don't hear anything negative about that either, the experience.
Slade believes that's why her aunt has lived such a long life.
Her heart is in a place that she loves all people. She always has. She finds the good in everyone.
It's those kinds of stories the Second Ward Alumni Foundation hopes the community will help them gather more of as they work to keep this historic school in the forefront of Charlotte's history. The Second Ward Alumni Foundation is in the midst of a capital campaign to raise $2 million to either fully restore or tear down and rebuild this alumni house. They're envisioning a museum with interactive exhibits, and their goal is to start construction later this year. In West Charlotte, Jonathan Lowe, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
It was considered the AAA for Black Americans as they traveled in the Jim Crow era. The Green Book listed safe places for families to eat, sleep, and even get their hair styled without fear of trouble.
And here in Charlotte, several businesses made that list, but only one is still around. Channel 9's Jason Stujenki takes us to the original Chicken and Ribs in West Charlotte.
Original Chicken and Ribs on Beatties Ford Road in West Charlotte. Jermaine Blackman's grandfather started the restaurant in 1952.
Not just Charlotte history, but a part of American history, you know, and the story can't be told without us.
The story of the Green Book.
I love to bring people in and share my story. I don't thump my chest about it, but when people ask, I do let them know, you know, and I'm proud to be a part of it.
It's the only Charlotte business in the book still in business.
It's very important. You got to get it out there.
Especially when you know you got somewhere safe to go, you got someone that's something that's inclusive, and what the Green Book represents.
Starting route to 1001 Oaklawn Avenue.
I went around town, a windshield tour of the other addresses in the book.
So it was Fairview Barber Shop, and right now it looks like it's either this empty lot or the trees. So this was Joe's Auto Repair. Instead now, just kind of empty in a house right up here on the right. So where the soccer field is, this was Davis Sandwich Shop. Maxie's Coffee House used to be right here. This used to be McGowan's boarding house.
And my last stop?
Right here, so.
Historic Rosedale, to see this exhibit about the Green Book called Oasis Spaces. John Cooper helped coordinate it.
But of course you had to do what you had to do to travel.
Victor Hugo Green started the Green Book in 1936 to give Black travelers information to keep them from, quote, running into difficulties, embarrassments.
We think traveling is just, you know, accessible and easy, but it's not. It was not always like that.
The book covered far more than just places to eat or stay.
Hotels, taverns, garages, nightclubs, restaurants, service stations, automotive, tourist homes, roadhouses, barber shops, beauty parlors.
And it included this wish.
There will be a day sometime in the near future when this guide will not have to be published.
Think about that, right?
Back at Original Chicken and Ribs, Blackman does think about it and is always willing to talk about it as well.
And they always say, you know, if you don't know history, you're doomed to repeat it. So it's,
exactly.
You can't ever tell the story enough.
No. And never shy away from telling the story.
In West Charlotte, Jason Stujenki, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
You can visit the Oasis Spaces exhibit at Historic Rosedale on North Tryon Street.
It's free and runs until March 15th. It's open Wednesday through Fridays and select Saturdays.
We have much more ahead as we celebrate Black history in the Carolinas, a legacy of leadership.
I mean, we run. People think rap now is so extraordinary. They better not give me a chance to get on show rapping. I already know how to do that stuff with my eyes closed.
Chatty Hattie, the first Black woman DJ in Charlotte. The trailblazer has rubbed elbows with some of music's biggest legends.
I would MC James Brown, the godfather of soul. He was my main man.
And now the Radio Music Hall of Famer is hoping to accomplish one more goal.
Long before there was the MEAC or the SWAC, two local HBCU football teams faced off for bragging rights.
For both institutions to put that game together, it shows you a level of strength and a level of pride.
Biddle College, now Johnson C. Smith University, against Livingstone College. The impact of that history-making football game generations later.